How many people were here last night? Oh, well, you've already heard me play. Yeah, let's see what I got plugged in. So last night I played through two of these. I will say this is maybe the loudest room I've ever played in, so but I don't think we have the guitar on the PA right now. So that's just the end right there. There's no pedals. On boost mode. I see a couple people holding their ears, sorry. It's just really loud anyway. But I can't really show you what the amp does if I don't turn it up. This is an amp that wants to be turned up. And in most rooms, it's really not that loud. And that was the whole idea behind the 15 was to come out with an amp that could give you the experience of having a tube amplifier, a vintage style tube amplifier, be able to turn it up, and then have it cost third as much as the 30 watt amp that I've been using for over 10 years now. And it came out really great, and I'm really happy with it. But you know, normally with my band, I'm using two of them. The fact that it only has a 112 speaker cabinet also cuts the volume down. So there's just, you know, how many of you play in bands? How many here, not you, Eli, but how many of the other people are professional musicians that play all the time? Okay, we got like 4, so maybe y'all should come up and teach this. I don't know. So I'm going to talk about some stuff that maybe you are totally familiar with, but my goal today is to sort of impart as much knowledge as I can, and I encourage you to ask questions. Probably with as many people, if you raise your hand and speak loudly, since it's a great echo in here, but I want you to ask questions and kind of let this thing just flow organically. But so my tone, the tones that I've always chased are based on the sounds I heard growing up, whether it was the Allman Brothers or Fillmore East, the first 3 ZZ Top records, Albert King's earlier stuff. In some respects, people like Wes Montgomery and Pat Metheny. Those are the electric tones that I was always chasing. And not so much Pat or Wes, but the blues rock guys were all using amplifiers that did not have master volumes. And so the distortion that was created that they were playing was coming from the output stage. They just had volume, they would turn that up. And so when we started designing amps for PRS, that's what we were trying to create, was again, if Dwayne Allman at the Fillmore East is kind of the pinnacle of that particular tone for me, or Trace Hombres, those two records. And if you listen to Dwayne on, for instance, the You Don't Love Me, if you know the Fillmore East record, in the breakdown part, and he just is getting, a couple times holds notes and he's getting this feedback, this infinite sustain that doesn't sound really distorted. And so it's like this clean feedback. That's what when I started talking to Doug, that's what I need to get, is some clean feedback. And so that's really, to me, only possible if it's coming from the output stage. So most modern amps are designed where you turn the preamp up. In some cases, it's called volume. On this amp, it's called volume. And then you have a master volume. So most people turn the preamp, the volume, way up, and then the master way down. And that is cool for certain things. And a lot of great players do that. And I just don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever, but it's just not my thing. To do what I'm trying to achieve requires me to get the power tubes and the transformers to do a thing. And sort of over the evolution of, as long as I've been doing this, when I started out, I could take a 100-watt Marshall to the gig and not be yelled at. But that is kind of, if you put it on a curve, it's like the wattage just keeps going down and down and down and down and down and down until now we're in Kempers. And I'm not there, but that's a common situation. So I'm a big proponent of taking the right amp for the gig. And so I would, personally, I'd rather take a little Fender Pro Junior and be able to turn it up to 6 or 7 than take an AC30, which I love, and it's the amp I always ask for if I'm renting amplifiers on the back line, and not be able to turn it up very much. Because to me, the feel in my hands and the ability of the amp to produce the sounds that I'm trying to make with my hands is enhanced much more when the output stage is going to overdrive. So that's another thing I think people don't talk about very much when they talk about amps, is how does it feel? We talk about how does it sound. Well, as a player, when you get to a certain point, you realize that really the most important component of the whole chain here, everything you see sitting up here, is these two things. And I can't get the tone I can get without, I have to make the sound. You have to make the sound with your hands, and then you have these two things here called pickups, which are essentially microphones that are picking up what you're putting down. It's a song written by a friend of mine. You're picking up on what I'm putting down. Pickups, hence they're called pickups. They're picking up on what I'm putting down. So they then transmit that into the amplifier, which for me, and I think a lot of people can benefit and become much better players if they start thinking about that a little more. I have this interaction with the amplifier. When I play harder, the amp does a certain thing. And, we spent a lot of time on adjusting things to just get a little bit of compression so that I'll play harder. It doesn't like jump out like spiky, but it'll be louder, but it's like can be a cushier, softer loud if I so choose to make it come out that way with my hands. If I play light, it cleans up. So how does the amp feel? And so you're not going to be able to hear it that much, but when I have a smaller group of people and I can walk around the room, I will just walk around and hear. So, can you hear that at all?
Yeah.
So, it doesn't sound any different than. So, what you heard with no amplifier is not. So, for instance, if I play like this. That's way different than. You hear how different that is? I mean, if there's no way it's going to sound like. So, if you look at like, to get your head around this concept, think of Albert King. Almost every solo Albert King plays is 5 notes. It's the minor pentatonic scale. It's almost the entire, every solo he's almost every place is 5 notes. But what he's doing is what I just showed you. It's the expression that comes out. And he's making that sound with his hands that nobody, I try to recreate it my whole life, and I can't still figure out how to get exactly his thing. But so I'm weaving in and out of guitar playing and amps and everything else. And if you have any questions, ask. But so many people I see are technically good players, not necessarily like professionals on Instagram, but when I do workshops or if I teach, I work with a lot of people and see a lot of people that can play a lot of stuff, and they know scales and they know modes, but when they play, I don't feel anything. And a lot of that is because they're not really concentrating on transmitting the emotion that I think we all relate to, like when we hear Albert King or Dwayne Allman or Billy Gibbons, especially the early stuff, or Jeff Beck, the absolute embodiment of everything I'm talking about right now, Jeff Beck, because he can do more with his fingers, and I mean, he's no longer with us, but I saw him 3 months before he passed, and it was the best I've ever heard. And I got to stand on the stage about 20 feet from him, and it was a religious experience, let me tell you. But I watched him, and it's just, the guitar, he never tuned the guitar once. I mean, you know, he's the embodiment of what I'm talking about, this ability to take what he hears in his head, make that sound with his hands, and have it come out of the speakers, which is all a function of the way he's hitting the strings and the amp he's using. So, going back to what I was saying, what I've kind of like in my teaching, just tried to simplify so much and not like lay. I mean, if we were going to have a long, week-long thing, I would definitely talk about a lot more in-depth scales and modes or lack of modes, the way I think. But I mean, I encourage you to just take 1 or 2 licks, but that sound badass, and really be able to play those licks the way they sound on the record. For instance, if you look at the beginning of Jesus Just Left Chicago, the first lick he plays. Just take that lick and make it sound like that. 2 notes. Just take those 2 notes and make it sound like that. It's not, which is the way people that haven't played a lot are going to play that. So start really slow. And to be able to do that and to give yourself a chance to play like that, to me, it starts like before you even play anything, it's think about your hand position on the guitar. I want to set myself up to play from a position of strength. So that means I'm not going to have my thumb on the back of the neck. Now, if you're a classical player or maybe a jazz player, you can completely disregard what I'm saying. And if you love to play this way, you can disregard anything you want. All I'm offering up is my experience. And that's all I've got. So, you know, take everything with a grain of salt. But for me, there's no way I can play for about 5 different reasons, which I'm going to kind of quickly go through. If I didn't have my thumb like this, and I'm essentially grabbing the neck, okay, so that gives my left hand that I have the possibility to be able to do a lot of things that you couldn't do if you weren't doing that. And the first thing I would think of is the ability to have good vibrato when I bend notes. To be able to have control over that. So this is a fulcrum. This is like, I mean, it's giving me so much strength right there. So that, and then I want the right hand to be, I want the heel of my right hand to be somewhere near or on the bridge so that I can mute with my right hand when necessary. Because when you're playing with gain, or if you want to sure the strings don't run away. That's one way to do it. There's also left-hand muting. But I want to be able to go back and forth between legato and staccato, flowing phrases and real more percussive phrases. And so I have to have my hand here to mute. And then I can lift it up. Which brings me to the other thing about the thumb, is how many of you fret notes with your thumb? Well, that's a high percentage compared to what I normally see. So, if you don't fret, if you're not fretting notes with your thumb, first of all, nobody's hands are too small. Don't try that one on me. No one's hands are too small to do this. This is a thing that if you're not doing it, it's like riding a bike. If you just keep trying, one day you're riding the bike. So, if you leave here with one thing today, make it that. Fret. Know that if you're not doing it, you need to start working on it, because you are leaving half. I couldn't play half of what I play if I didn't do that. There's no way under the sun. And so if that's the only thing you take away from what we're talking about today, I would encourage you to investigate that. So it allows me to not only fret notes, but when it hangs over, I can mute the fifth string, so that when I'm playing things like I can mute strings that I don't want to ring, and I can play with my pick strings. I can jump strings without anything ringing over and making a bad noise. I can do it in B flat. Like if the A rang over into B, it's not a terrible thing, but in B flat, not good. But I see if with this technique. It's all doable. So that not only am I fretting the low note with my thumb, but I'm muting the A string with my thumb. So from there, how many of you guys and ladies do any hybrid picking using a pick and fingers? Man, this is like the most advanced group of people I've ever seen. Again, the second thing, if you take away today, is if you're not doing this, I would really encourage you to start doing this. And so my technique, which is everybody has a little different idea what a hybrid picking is to use the pick and then my middle finger and my ring finger at the same time. And I could never play things like there's just no way to make that sound with a pick. It's not the same. So there's a time to just use a pick, and there's a time to just use your fingers, but it's that in-between hybrid picking thing that opens up a world of possibilities. And it can just be something as simple as, yes?
I was going to add to that, Danny Gatton had a great analogy to what you're saying is, think of your other fingers as extra picks.
They are extra picks.
Extra picks.
And they are also, this gives you the ability on the guitar, when we strum, we're going across the strings at slightly different moments. Whereas on a piano, you can just go like that and play the chord. So with this technique, it's different than, it allows me to play chords like I would on a piano. can skip across here. I'm playing. It just allows me to create sounds and to play chords in ways and play chords that I couldn't play if I was using a pick. So to get that technique going, it can be very daunting if you're not doing it at all. But again, this, just as I told you, put 2 notes to kind of work on your feel. Just start. So that's fretting the A with my thumb, letting it hang over and be the A string, and then I'm with my 3rd finger playing the A, the octave above on the 7th fret. So the pick hits the low note, middle finger pops the high note. Just start that, or just and pop it. That popping thing. You can't get that sound. You come close. So I don't want to do that all the time, but what I'm trying to do is increase the range of tones and going back and forth between very staccato things and more legato things. So you hear there where I can lift my right hand up and use my pick, and it becomes more flowing, legato. Whereas if I mute down and then use my fingers more, it becomes, as opposed to, it's all valid. It's all valid, but I'm trying to open up these different techniques to you to really broaden your playing. Yes?
Show us your pick.
The pick is, okay, this is a very interesting thing. Okay. Standard triangular pick. There's just some sort of thing that I'm hearing about on the internet now that you should use it like this.
It's a Joe Walsh idea. Been around forever.
Well, I learned like this, and I've been doing it for 40 years. You want me to now turn it over and do it like this? I tried it for about 5 minutes. I'm like, what, am I supposed to start over? And it doesn't really sound any different to me. And my playing really sucks now. So here's what I've discovered, because I never even thought about it before. By using the point end, I don't think about this stuff. I just do it. But because it's become like people are asking me to use the point or the shoulder. And apparently, there's some guys that I really respect that use the shoulder, and more power to them, and they sound awesome. But that's the way they learned, and that's how they make their sound. So what I discovered was, by actually analyzing it, is I'm not just using the point, but when I hold it like this whole side of the pick comes into play. And so then I can change how much of the point I'm introducing, and then move it to the side like this, and I'm effectively getting something similar to what you're getting with the shoulder. But for me, in my technique, I just don't even think about it, but I'm constantly using different parts of the pick. And so I'm just going to tell you, if you're a good player, and your whole life you can either play like this, or you can play like that, I give you full permission not to change. I'm absolving you of any sin right now. You don't need to change.
Hey, David. So, one of the things that you do instinctively in the way that you play all the time, and it's one of the things that when I'm demonstrating a PRS guitar, and as a PRS player myself is now intimate in my playing, is your use of the volume knob.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of players that myself included in the early days that it's just always, am I on 10? Am I on 10? Am I on 10? Am I on 10? And you don't think of it as a tone shaping tool necessarily, maybe because the other one's labeled tone and that one just says volume. It's just volume. And depending on the guitar that you have, not all pots are created equally. A lot of pots, there's not much range. It's either off or suddenly it's on, and that's it, and there's no real range. When you get a guitar that's got a really good pot, there's so much you can do, especially with the way you set your amps in control. So can you talk a little bit about how you incorporate that as part of your actual playing?
Yeah, it's a huge thing. And you'll find that on certain guitars, new and old, when you turn the guitar down, it gets darker. That drives me nuts. So these guitars all have a treble bleed cap, so that when I turn the guitar down, I don't lose top end. I don't lose bottom end. I just have the same sound. And we've got the value very carefully calibrated so that all it does is I'm feeding less signal to the amp and I'm not losing tone. I don't want to turn down and lose tone. I've played certain vintage guitars where when you turn down, they get a little darker, and I can work with that, but real quick, let me just talk about my whole approach to amps, tone, overdrive, and all that, and how I'm using the gear. And the volume knob is a huge part of that. And to make that work, I have to have a good pot with this treble bleed circuit on, meaning, again, I'm not losing top end when I turn the guitar down. So, I'm going to go through it quickly. My first step is to pick the right, find the gear that I really like, and that I'm bonded with, and I set the amp to where when my guitar's turned all the way up and I play hard, I'm getting some crunch and some overdrive. The edge of breakup, whatever you want to call it. If I play really hard, it's beyond the edge of breakup. That's before I turn any pedals on. So it sounds like this. That's just the amp. And from there, first of all, I've never bonded with channel switching amps. I've tried lots of them, and I've found that the clean channel is too clean for me, and the dirty channel is too dirty. There's that middle sweet spot that comes with vintage amps, Tweed Deluxes, High Watts, Marshalls, Foxes, that's not there in those amps for me. A lot of people love them and use them and get great sounds. All totally legit. Again, this is just what works for me. So once I start at that point, that's sort of if you want, my channel 2, where channel 1, all I have to do is turn the volume down to about 6 or 7. And then I have a clean sound. And it's not like twin reverb clean. It's got a little bit of harmonic content in it, which I always liked. And if you listen to certain clean sounds, unless it's like guys going direct, like in the 80s, the Steve Lukather and all that stuff, and they would just get this tinky, cool, rhythmic R&B thing. The sounds that I think of as clean still have a little bit of harmonic content in them. So that's not crystal clear, but it's clean. And if I go on this guitar, we have a beautiful coil tab. When I put it in single coil, and if I put some delay on it, So that, I mean, I don't have to go to the quartet, and I don't have to put the delay on, but I'm just turning down the 7 there, and not playing quite as hard. And if I just turn the amp all the way up again, the guitar all the way up. So that's really my clean channel. It's just by turning the volume control down. By having the right guitar, the right pot, the right circuit, it allows me to do that and play a little softer. But I can even turn it down further and play hard. If I want to make it really. I'm playing almost as hard as I can there, and it's still, it's clean. It's just turning it down to about 5. So I'm not touching anything except the volume control to do that. And from there, if that's channel 1, the volume all the way up is channel 2, I can go to channel 3 by just hitting a clean boost. And my preference is the exotic EP booster. And the trick to that pedal is to go inside and the dip switches. There's a bunch of dip switches in there that give you different modes. And so I put it in vintage mode, which makes it where it does not add top end. I don't want my overdrive tone to get brighter. I want it to stay where I am or even a little less top end to make it smooth and just be a more pleasing full sound. So this is with no pedals. I'm going to turn the booster on. It gets a little more of the same, but more gain. I mean, that's like, I like that. And so with this booster on, I also get something different. As opposed to turning the booster off and turning the volume all the way up. Sometimes I'll turn the booster on and then turn the volume down a little bit. And that gives me a different thing too. But my goal here is to really just get this great beginning tone as the foundation, and then be able to build on that or maybe subtract from that a little bit. Without like all of a sudden I have a completely different amplifier. When I'm in the moment and I'm improvising and I'm on a gig and you have to be quick, that works really well for me. When I'm in the studio, I can take the time to readjust the tone controls on the amp and do a bunch of different things to basically make it sound like a different amp. You have a question?
So, just to clarify on that last demonstration, was that boost a pedal or the amp boost?
It is an exotic EP booster.
Okay, but there is a boost on the amp too, right?
Okay, I'll get to that in 1 second. Let me show you in just 1 second. So that would be my 3rd channel. And then beyond that, I have an overdrive pedal that's designed to sound a lot like the EP booster, but to also introduce gain. And it has a tone control on it, so that gives me a little more flexibility. you know, who needs a channel switch in there? We need 5 channels. Just put them both on. So that's more gain than I have, you know, normally would use, certainly on a record. But like live, when I'm soloing, I'll maybe start with the EP booster on, and then when I'm working, you know, when I need to go one louder or one thicker, I'll put the other pedal on as well, especially when I get up into the higher notes. It really thickens the notes up. So it's, in the board I have with me, it's essentially 4 pedals on it. I don't know if you all can look at this or not, but I can't, I'm all tangled up here, but I'm upside down. So it starts here with the overdrive, the boost, the most important pedal on the board, the tuner, the Arion stereo chorus, and then the El Capistan delay, and then I have this little switch here which allows me to have a second pre-programmed sound on the delay. So it goes that way. It seems to confound people that I'm going that way. The reason is because I usually stand to the left of the pedal board when I'm soloing, and these are the pedals I hit more often. And I want them to be wherever my right foot is. So it's nothing, there's nothing to it other than that. But overdrive's first, modulation, delay last is a good starting point if you're putting a board together. So for the studio, my board's about 5 times this big. But for live, this is all I need. I can put it in the little carrying case that goes in my carry-on luggage and take it everywhere with me. And a power supply that adjusts to international voltages. Take it everywhere.
What's the amp on right
The amp is, the master's on about, what is that, 3 o'clock? And then the volume is on 5, straight up. So, you were asking me about a boost in the amp. So there's a lot of things about this amp, that there's a lot more features in this amp than the 30 watt amp. And the 30 watt is the one I've been playing through forever. It's hand wired, and it's really expensive, and sounds awesome, and I use it like a ton. The Doug Sewell basically watched, I did a video that's on YouTube on my approach to great electric guitar sounds, and I've talked about a lot of different things that I do in the studio with the 30 watt amp. Well, I'll go into the normal mode and put the bright switch on, and I want like more of a blackface Fender sound. And what else would I talk about? That's sort of, he took that and did a thing with a mini switch to so I don't have to go back to the amp to do it, but both of these amps have what's a normal mode and a boost mode, and it's a little confusing because the boost is not like putting a pedal on. It's not adding anything. What you can think of it as more like on an amplifier that has a high input and a low input. So that the normal mode is attenuating the signal a little bit, and the boost mode is letting more signal into the amplifier, so you're getting more signal going in. It's not an active circuit. You're not adding anything. It's just the amount of attenuation at the input. It's like JCM 800 Marshalls have, high sensitivity and low sensitivity. It's the same principle. So what Doug did was we have a 3-way foot switch here, and there are 3 mini toggle switches on the amp. And starting to the left, you can choose whether you want to go from boost to normal mode with the foot switch, or just keep it in normal mode, or just keep it in boost mode. Live, I just keep it in boost mode. And today, everything I've played has been in boost mode. But now I have it set this mini switch to where the foot switch will control it. So then, the next mini toggle, which is the brilliant thing for me, is you can turn the bright switch on for both, normal and boost. You can turn it off for both. Or when it's all the way down, like I have it, the bright switch only works in the normal mode. So let me show you what that does for me. To set my amp up for the bridge pickup, I'm not tuned because I care, as I said last night. When I'm setting it up, I solo on the bridge pickup most of the time, so I'm setting the top end of the amplifier to kind of accommodate that. But then sometimes when I switch to the net pickup, even though it's a lower output and a brighter pickup, it can be a little muddy. And so I don't really go there that much. So I had to set up, so here's that's cool. It doesn't sound bad, the net pickup. But when I go to normal mode, I have the bright switch on.